Like,
Can I sit here?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
I mean, you don't need no invitation.
Yes. So, what you doing?
You know, I'm doing my usual, just, writing down my thoughts, ideas for my next book.
I see. Well, I didn't want to bother you, but I'm just saying, I think it's a perfect time for Artist Apex. Mm-hmm.
Oh man, I don't know about all that, man. Like, I don't, I'm an author, but I don't really consider myself a artist.
But isn't writing an art form?
So true, so true. You got me there. Yes, writing is an art form, so I guess it makes sense for us to do Artist Apex.
Mm-hmm.
So what is it you want to know?
I want to know what's your thought process on how you write or how you get to starting to write.
Well, writing has been in my blood since I was young. So I knew from a very young age that I wanted to write. I think a lot of it had to do with my upbringing. I do have a sister, but I didn't have the privilege of growing up with her. So I was very close to my cousins and close to certain people in my family, but I didn't have the luxury of being around them all the time. So I was pretty much by myself. So as you can imagine, being like growing up most of the time as an only child, it's like you got to use your imagination a little bit more so compared to like if you did grow up with brothers and sisters or constantly around family all the time. So writing was like my outlet. I just realized right off the bat, two things I've always were fascinated by is words and sounds. I don't know why. I can't give you a reason why. I just always been obsessed with it. So with words, it was nothing for me to get into reading book after book after book. Didn't matter the genre, the type of story it is. As long as it's a book for me to read, I'm going to go ahead and read it. And then just looking at different words, it always like amazed me how many words there are in our vocabulary, just in the English language alone, and how many different words that you can use to describe like one thing. I don't think a lot of people realize how in depth the English language is when it comes to like different words and whatnot. And then reading stories, you come across words you're not familiar with. It's like it was nothing for me to grab a dictionary and do my research, get an understanding of the word, find out its definition, and make a note of it. I'm constantly making a note of it. So if anybody who knows me personally knows, I usually keep a notebook with me at all times. Even as a young kid, I always kept like an extra notebook outside of my subjects for school, just for me to jot down stuff. Not everything that I jot down is very cohesive, but something that I definitely wanted to keep in mind and use later, I would go ahead and jot it down. So I've always had a passion for writing, always had a love for words, interest in words. And then the fact that growing up by myself, just using my imagination, the fact that I could grab a notebook, grab this pen, and just start jotting down whatever it is that come to my mind. No matter how wild it could be, it's just like I could write it down and I could slowly see the words come to life. If that makes any kind of sense.
I mean, you're better than me. The only time I have a pen or a pencil in my hands when I'm drawing, and you know this. You're very well aware.
I'm definitely aware of that. And you're very good at what you do.
Thank you.
Definitely that just shows there's more than one way to use a pen and pencil.
Definitely. Yep.
So I get that a lot from a lot of people. Like it's hard. Like growing up, going to school, people hated book reports and essays and all that kind of stuff. Anything to deal with kind of like any type of writing project. The kids I used to go to school with, they would dread it. Wait till the last second to do it. I thrived in that element. That's why I pretty much, and I don't say this like a bragging or whatever, or put myself on a pedestal, but I pretty much got straight A's in English, because it's just something about writing, and it was just a great way to allow me to express myself freely. Like just have that ultimate range of freedom. You know, because I don't have a problem talking with people. I don't have a problem articulating myself. But sometimes the way I go about things and explain my thoughts and my feelings, it's like a spectrum, right? So I go to like two extremes. So the one extreme is I end up getting real emotional, like overly emotional, overly theatrical. And over time, it's like people look at it like, yeah, Zeus, you're being a little bit too much right now. Like, I really don't want to deal with you right now. Everything I'm saying has got lost in the translation because of how emotional I am. Then the other end of the spectrum is I get real analytical. So if it's something that I'm really in tune with and I'm really passionate about, I tend to go a little overboard as far as explaining myself. And I'm really breaking it down to its most minute detail. And then I could just see the expression on people's face. And they're just like, okay, Zeus, I appreciate you breaking that down. But that stuff is way over my head. I ain't understand half the things that you just said. So when it comes to writing, having that freedom and just knowing that whatever I write in the notebook, it's going to take whatever punishment I give it. However I want to express myself through my words, whether it's poetry, short stories, whatever it is I'm trying to write, I never have to worry about the notebook being offended, not understanding where I'm coming from, feeling some type of way, being emotional, feeling that what I'm writing is controversial. I don't have to compete with the notebook, you know? Not that I don't love people in general, but it's sometimes hard to speak with other people because there's so many things you have to keep in mind as you're talking with people, not to offend them, you know? To express yourself in a way where they would understand where you're coming from. But there's some times where you got to be kind of forceful to get your point across, right? And some people can't adapt to that, you know? So when it comes to my writing and just doing it in a notebook and just writing my thoughts down, it's very therapeutic for me, you know? So I get it that I'm a very complex person, you know? So it's great that I have an outlet like this where it allows me to kind of express myself and I don't have to worry about anything else, you know?
Yes. I have a question.
Yeah.
When you're writing, because I know this happens with a lot of artists who paint and draw, we have like this block. And I know it's called writer's block. When you do have it, how do you get out of it? Or how do you motivate yourself to keep going?
Time. I mean, I think the problem with a lot of people is like you really want to get something done, especially if you put a deadline on yourself, you know? And that's when you start feeling overwhelmed because you're putting added pressure on your shoulders that doesn't need to be there. You know, it's inevitable. Whatever you're into, whether it's writing, drawing, painting, doing music, being a music producer, you're going to have a time period there where like stuff is just not coming across right. There's nothing against you. It's just you just don't have any fresh ideas. You know, maybe the everyday living, there's nothing exciting going on. There's nothing going on to give you kind of like some inspiration to work on your art form. It's okay. Sometimes you just need to back away for a little while to get yourself back together. You might be going through some things internally, you know? Maybe you're going through some things in your personal life that's taking you more away from what you love to do. And that's fine. You know, that's just part of life. You know, for me, I do get writer's block. But I'm going to show you real quick what helps me kind of get out of it really quick and eventually keeps me back focused at the task at hand. If you notice here, I know it looks like chicken scratch, but you're going to see a bunch of words, a bunch of different phrases on here. And this is my template, my roadmap, as it were, to going about putting my concepts together, my ideas together, as far as what I'm going to be working on, whether it's going to be a poem or a short story. Again, it looks crazy, it looks chaotic, but this is so perfect for me. So basically what I do is whatever I read, anything that I view, whether it's YouTube videos, movies, television shows, even when I interact with people. Obviously, I read all the time, so I definitely draw inspiration from what I read. But even when I interact with people, I pay attention to what they say. I pay attention to their tone, their cadences, their mannerisms, the terminology that they use, the phrases that they use. You'd be surprised if you pay attention to what people say. I know with me personally, can't speak for everybody else, but I pick up on a lot of key words that I'm not accustomed to, that I'm not used to. I may have came across maybe once or twice in my life. Or I come across some phrases or words I've never heard of before. That excites me. So I go ahead and write them down, and when I get a chance, I look it up, see the meaning of it, get an understanding of the language behind it, how I can utilize that properly. And it's great. You know, I know for other writers, they tend to lean on maybe their favorite author to try to get some kind of inspiration, get their mojo going, as it were, to try to start writing. For me, a lot of it has to do with paying attention to what I'm viewing and who I'm interacting with, really listening to the words and seeing how they put it in context to their thoughts, right? And seeing their cadences, like I said, their mannerisms, how they use the word, how they invoke emotion out of it as they're using the word. I pay attention to all that. So as you can see here, I got all the words on here. And then what I do is, over time, once I get a good amount of words, I start breaking the words down into groups where I'll put some rhyming words together, or I base the words off of meaning, and also too, like if it's a story, if I'm writing a short story, that these words really express what I'm looking for as I'm trying to write the story. Like these are like the perfect type of adjectives, adverbs that I can use to really describe what I got going on with my characters, with the backdrop, the overall plot of the story. So that's how I kind of like break the words down. And then from there, I do a couple things, right? So you can see here, and notice I got a whole bunch of different notebooks. Don't mind the stains on these papers. Notice too that I use any type of paper. So this was like an old poem that I was working on, and I never really did anything with it, and I just made a copy of it. And as you can see, I'm just jotting down more words. Like I got a whole bunch of these type of papers. I got posties, the little stickies that you can, throw anywhere on your desk or whatever like that, just filled up with different words and phrases and all that kind of stuff. But as you can see here, I quickly jot down different story concepts. And a lot of times I don't use everything that I write. I would say as far as concepts that I come with, I probably use like 70%, something around there as far as what I write. A lot of times when I start writing into something, writing a short story or a poem, I end up thinking about something else. So I have it jotted down that this is what I want to do. But I end up being like, you know what, I'll worry about that later because I really like this concept more. My mind is always working, constantly. That's why people misinterpret me all the time, because they'll see me with the serious look on my face and be like, this guy's angry at the world. He wants to rip everybody's head off. I ain't bothering with him. He's an a-hole, right? I don't think I'm an a-hole. I think I'm a pretty nice guy.
You're a good guy. You just got a big brain,
I mean, I appreciate that.
Big brain, lots of words.
I'm always in work mode, basically. I'm always thinking about my next idea. So for anybody out there, I hope if you felt like I offended you, that wasn't my intention. You know what I mean? I'm a pretty okay dude. It's just I'm always in thought process. Like it's like 100 voices is going crazy in my head trying to like take control of me. Like, Zeus, do this. No, Zeus, you got to be doing this. No, Zeus, this idea is better. Like it's like a tug of war within my head. And I'm just trying to find a way to keep myself balanced and not going crazy. You know? So also too, don't look at me different because I said I got voice in my head. You know, don't do that to me. You know what I mean? But anywho, as you can see, I write down some ideas. Now, to show you on here, I do prefer this method of actually writing it down. It feels more organic. Like I feel the words, and the words come to life to me more when I write them down. But yes, I'm in 2025. Yes, I'm with you guys out there. I do use technology. You know what I mean? So I'm a big fan of Google software suite. And they have like a notepad app called Google Keep. And I definitely use this. As you can see an example here. The main time I use my phone is when I actually have an outline already thought out. And usually when I have it thought out, I have to immediately like type it down. So it's quicker for me to type it down than for me to write it. Because I know if I start writing it, I'm going to end up starting to add more stuff. Or I'm going to start crossing stuff out. And it's like, I just want to get the thought out. I'll worry about all the editing and all the other stuff later. So it's better for me to just go ahead and just type it all out on my phone. So as you can see, I got some other stuff on here too. But like that's another one. That's another one for these are a few right here for some short stories that's coming out for my next book. That's coming. You know, there's no date for it or not like that, but you know it's coming. You know, but if I scroll down more, you know, you're going to see a lot more stuff. And as you can see, I'm just filling it up, you know? So it's not to say that what I write down is set in stone. That's what I'm using. I'm not going to change anything. Most of the time I end up crossing a lot of stuff out and just injecting some new stuff. Sometimes things tend to like run a little bit too long, especially like for poems. And then like the actual purpose for the actual theme or the message I'm trying to convey within the poem, it ends up getting lost because I'm kind of like dragging it out. Sort of like the short stories too. I tend to get in that kind of mode too, a little bit like taking too long to get to the point. I know you guys can feel that. You watch a movie, watch a TV show, and you're just like, you know what, I'm about to turn this off, watch something else because you just lost my interest, you know? So you got to find that balance as a writer too. Write what you want to write. You know, you definitely can't keep in mind what for other people. If you're going into something, it's because you really are passionate about it first and foremost, right? And then number two, you have to do the art form for yourself. So we're here talking about writing, right? I write for myself first. Yes, I want people to enjoy my writing. But also, too, I'm not oblivious to the fact that there are people out there that's not going to like my writing. And that's okay. You know, everybody has their own opinion and their own taste. They got their likes and dislikes. You just have to accept that. At the end of the day, you've been given a privilege here and the opportunity to express yourself through your art form. You owe it to yourself to explore it, you know, and see where it takes you, you know. And if all else fails, at least you're doing something you're passionate about, which is, to me, the most important, right? So I'm jotting down notes. Let me see something here real quick with this one. Bring this over here. So this right here is from not my last book, Dimensions, but the one before it called Mixtures. And for anybody out there that has purchased the book, I appreciate it. If you haven't purchased the book, what are you waiting on? Get that. Get Dimensions. It's basically part of a book series. Like I said, I'm working on the third part as we speak. But it covers the short stories that I write. Covers all different types of genres. So real quick history when it comes to my writing, and this is what I recommend for a lot of people out there. Whatever your art form is, try to push the needle, as it were, to try to advance yourself within your craft, to get better at it, You know, try to improve on your ability. Now, if you end up getting really good at one thing, that's fine. I'm not knocking for nobody out there. You know, if you're a writer yourself, or you're looking into get into your writing, doing writing projects, become a published author, it's okay if you're just going to write in one genre. That's fine. I'm not knocking you for it. But I feel, again, you owe it to yourself to kind of like branch out and see how good of a writer you can really be. Like expand your repertoire, as it were, and try out different things. And if it doesn't work out, it's fine. You know what I mean? But it's not going to hurt you to try new things, right? So eventually I started with poetry. I tried to make the poetry a little bit more transparent, talk a lot in depth about my life personally, very intimate moments, feelings, thoughts that I had of stuff that I was going through. That turned into writing essays on thought-provoking topics that I came up with. That turned into a little bit of a doozy for me because people were feeling a lot of things that I wrote in there were very controversial, and they were taking a lot of things what I writing in there as factual. When I let it be known that this is just very opinionated. These are just my thoughts based off the topic that is, you know, provided there. And that just turned into a whole spiel. I don't regret writing it, but it is what it is, you know. But from essays, that turned into writing short stories. So in my last 2 books, I've been really in depth with writing short stories of all different types of genres. Eventually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to transition that into finally writing my first novel. So a full-fledged story and not chopped up into smaller stories. So that's the goal that I'm working on, you know. But as you can see here, I got God Among Men. This was in not my last book, Dimensions, but the one before, Mixtures. And just the quick premise of the book, it deals with Greek mythology. You know me, I'm ZEUS CRUZ. You know, I love my Greek mythology, if anybody knows that. Can't get enough of it because there's just so many different characters and storylines and how they're all intertwined with each other. So with this one, the premise for it was, what if Zeus lost his power and his divinity and he had to come down to earth and live among mortals? How would he be able to adapt to that kind of life? You know? So that was the whole purpose for this story. It's a lot more stuff involved with the story, but that's the basic gist of it. But if you notice how I write, I'm just writing, guys. Again, looks like slop. You see I'm constantly crossing out stuff.
If that looks like slop, then you don't want to look at my sketchbook. You don't want to look at that then.
I mean, yeah. I mean, you know, I think to the average person, if they see this, it looks a little cluttered. It doesn't look too bad. One thing I do that's different from a lot of writers, I tend to proofread my stuff as I go. So usually if I write after 4 or 5 pages, I'll start proofreading. So I know that's not like a good habit. Usually you want to just go ahead and just write the whole thing and then go about editing. But I'm just weird like that. You know, I like to edit as I go. It works for me. It doesn't I don't really have anybody who edits my work. So I do have an associate that I work with. From time to time, she helps me out when she can. Edit my work, help me with some redrafts, so forth and so on. But most of the time I do the editing on my own. So it's just easier for me to just edit as I go. But as you notice, I'm just writing. A lot of this end up changing, you know, the final product once it hits the book. But this is what I encourage you if you're looking into getting into writing. It's just you tend to just need to just keep writing. Just keep writing. Thoughts may not be always cohesive as you're writing, and that's fine. It's okay. But as long as you keep writing, the thoughts keep pouring in. You take some time out to look over your notes At some point in time, you're going to be able to formulate what you got down here into something cohesive, something that people can understand, something that people can appreciate, you know? So don't look at it like because you're writing and it seems it doesn't have like much direction to it. It's fine. You know, eventually over time, you'll find a direction. You'll find a way how you want to put your story together or put your poem together, and you'll be good to go. You know? So, even here, like you see, just a lot of things that I cross out. You notice I even go to the edge of the page. Yeah, I'm crazy like that. You know, I try to utilize every inch of the paper. Sometimes I skip on some stuff, but you know, whatever. And there's plenty of notebooks. Like this is one of the short stories from a new book called Barter of Sins that's going to be in the new book. And a lot of times too, the great thing about just continuing to write, and when I say continue to write, I write every day. I do not have a word count. So there's a lot of writers out there that tend to put that on themselves. Like they have to write like a certain amount of words per day. I don't do that. I ain't got time for all that counting and all that. I'm already dealing with a bunch of other stuff in my life for me to count how many words I do each day. I just write. So whether it's just I only had the opportunity to write one paragraph versus maybe the next day I was able to write a few pages. Either way, I do not go to sleep at night without me writing something. So with anything you do in life, it's about practice. You know, you got to keep yourself motivated and focused enough to practice. You're not going to get better if you don't practice enough, right? So with me, it's easy for me to write because I have such a passion for it. So, and also too, you guys know I operate Olympian Multimedia, so I deal with a lot of different like reports, different outlines that I got to come up with. So that kind of helps me too to keep in line when it comes to my writing, right? Because I'm constantly doing Word documents and things of that nature, right? So presentations, so forth and so on. So that allows me to be in that mode all the time and having that focus for my writing and, continue to jot down thoughts and ideas. Also, too, you see over here with these pads, a lot of this stuff, well, maybe not so much this one, but you can see here, these were like poems that I wrote. Sometimes I get a little crazy as far as like the length of the poem, but with this one, Once Upon a Time. Also, too, just real quick, whatever type of writing, you can expand on the style in which you're writing. And what I mean by that is, with this is a poem. It's Once Upon a Time, but it's actually written in story. Like it has the storytelling elements. So if you will read this poem, it feels like a story, even though it's written in poem form, right? Just like when you see here what I showed you in here in this notebook with God Among Men, me just writing the story out. You see there wasn't really like formatted right. There was no structure to it. It's just me writing. So with this poem, I was able to transition it to give it like that storytelling feel, even though it's within a poem. But when I'm writing my short stories, I do take inspiration from my poetry. So sometimes I revert back to it. I may not actually use the terms, the terminology, the different types of words, the sequence in which I put the words. I'm not going to duplicate that. But there might be some content in there that will put me back on the right track as far as like how I want to develop the story. So I definitely recommend for you guys out there, if you do have some previous work, look back on it. I do it all the time. And I think it helps too that I write in two different genres with poetry and short stories. Then I could pull inspiration for both, right? On whatever writing project that I'm about to work on. you know. So that's pretty much my insight when it comes to writing. It's not this real complex process to it. It's just me, as you see here. We'll go back to the chicken scratch. This is where it starts off from. Honestly, it starts up there. See them books? It starts with them books I read, you know. And a lot of these books, like some of them books that you just viewed just there, I done reread them about 3 or 4 times. You know, so it's constantly reading. Even if I can't find a new book that I could get into, I'll just reread what I got. You know? It seems like every time I reread something, it's sort of like rewatching a movie, right? You pick up on something that you didn't pick up on the last time you viewed it, right? So it's the same thought process. And then from here, I'm just jotting down words, phrases, just to create that spark on what my next poem is going to be. What my next story is going to be based on how I feel. So I know for everybody else, each their own. Maybe they have a more complex way of doing things, a more scientific way of doing things. They got some kind of special formula going on here on how they go about doing, you know, getting into their art form. With me, with writing, it's just paying attention to the world around me, whether I'm interacting or viewing something, paying attention to the words, doing the due process, as it were, getting an understanding, do my research, understanding how the word can be used, and how to invoke emotion into it. In turn, I start making a note of it, whether it's through here or through the phone. And then I start piecing it together like a puzzle and just start writing. So that's my artist apex right there. I hope for you out there, for you guys out there who are aspiring to write or currently writers, currently published authors, I hope this was insightful and helpful, you know. But whatever works for you, just do it to the fullest. You owe it to yourself. You know? So I appreciate you guys tuning in. I appreciate NANI the artist for coming in and bothering me.
Always. It's my job.
Oh boy, here we go. Well, anyway, appreciate you guys tuning in. You know who it is. ZEUS CRUZ. Look out for the new book. It's on its way. Check you later.